Hello, my brother. Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. I am now at that bittersweet part of my morning that comes every morning where I am approaching my last 3 or 4 sips of my beloved bulletproof coffee. I am sitting here holding my Contigo thermos, which is what I use to slowly sip my coffee over a 2-hour period of time to keep it hot. And I can feel that I've got no more than 3 or 4 sips left. And I'm optimally caffeinated, and yet I don't ever want this to end. Like, you coffee drinkers know what I'm talking about, right? And there's this part of my personality that, like, no matter how good something is, like how optimal it is, I just always want more until the point where it's like no longer good for me or healthy for me. Like, there was a time not too long ago, probably like 4 or 5 months ago, where I was drinking 2 of these 16-ounce Contigo thermoses of bulletproof coffee, where it just like blew out my nervous system. Like, I was tense throughout the day. I was wired, didn't sleep very well at night, or it impacted my sleep. My sleep was still pretty good, but it's definitely having an impact on my sleep. And I finally brought it back into alignment, but there's still that part of me that just wants to tip over into that self-destructive edge. But I know that you're here not allowing me to do that, and I'm going to enjoy my last 3 or 4 sips here with you. So speaking of enjoyment, I want to share with you an email I got this week from one of our listeners, Michael P., that really kind of made our week. He said, "Gents, thank you for creating a vibrant, open, and transparent forum for men and women to focus on their inner work. I'm a longtime consumer of your podcast, but a first-time emailer. And Dominic, for the last 2 weeks, you have personified MTXE, mental toughness, extra effort. A special note of appreciation for your stewardship during these tumultuous and uncertain times. Please keep up your valuable work. It is needed and appreciated by many quiet and almost silent fans of Do Inner Work. Gratefully, Michael P." Mike P., thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. For those of you who are out there who are longtime listeners and haven't yet let us know who you are, haven't revealed yourselves, this is your chance. Go to doinnerwork.com, share with us what's working for you. And I think this message prompted a check-in that I want to have with you today about how you are showing up as a leader in your business, in your life, and as of yourself over these last 4 weeks of quarantine. And I'm going to do a little bit of a self-assessment. This is going to be an exercise for you that I ran with our Great Man Mastermind on Thursday night with our group of 20 men, high-performing guys, leaders in their own right. And this exercise was really powerful for them, and I want to share it with you as well. But before I do that, I've mentioned to you, we've now basically finished up 4 weeks of quarantine, at least here in New York City. Maybe some of the places where you're living have been a little bit slower to adapt, but it's been about a month here. So this is a great time to check in with yourself as to where you are. And these 3 questions I'm going to ask you in a moment are really going to be helpful to be reflective of how you've shown up. And I'm going to ask a 4th question that is going to be a projection of how you want to show up as a leader in the future. And then after that, we're going to go through a recap of the last 6 days worth of podcasts. So to hit upon and reinforce the top messages of those episodes. Because on Sunday of last week, I ran an episode like that called Don't Waste This Wake Up Call, where I introduced a new concept and did a recap. And it turns out that was the most popular performing episode we've had in the last 3 weeks. So if that's what you're wanting, if that's what's really resonating with you, then let's do it again. Okay. I've mentioned to you a number of times over the last few weeks that great leaders adapt first, right? Great leaders adapt to changing situations, crisis situations. They stabilize first, internally for themselves first, and then show up as a better leader for those around them in their businesses, lives, relationships, you name it, anything that's important to you. And I've been asking one question over the last 4 weeks of probably 1,000 people now. And the one question is, what is the one word that best describes how you are feeling right now? And the answers still show up the same right? I've taken all of these answers that I've gotten back from 1,000 people and I've created a word cloud, and the word cloud is largely unchanged over these last 4 weeks. And the answers that come to the top, still 8 out of 10, anxious, frustrated, overwhelmed, exhausted, bored, angry, scared, nervous. 8 out of 10 answers are still of a negative orientation. I will say there's a slight uptick in words like grateful, blessed, optimistic, but those are still in the drastic minority, which means that the people in your family, the people you're doing business with, your clients, still are feeling, your parents, like anyone that you care about, 8 out of 10, an 80% chance potentially that there's a negative, overarching, overwhelming sentiment that they're feeling. So if you are stabilized internally and you are able to guide someone a step up or 2 steps up from anxious, from overwhelmed, from exhausted, then you are showing up as a great leader. And the thing that is seemingly so commonsensical, but it's not something that I see actually implemented, is the common sense thing is, if for someone who's feeling anxious or overwhelmed or exhausted, to say, okay, what is it that I want to feel? And then to implement tools, techniques, new habits, and rituals to get there. Most people are missing that step because they're so deep in that emotion. They don't know to ask what it is that they do want. And they don't know what tools that they can implement or skill sets they can rely upon to help them shift that feeling. That's why it's going to be important for you to guide them. But the only way that you're able to guide them is if you're stabilized internally, if you've adapted first. But by the very nature of you listening to the show, I have faith that you are already ahead of the curve. So let's ask the 3 questions that I asked the men of the mastermind the other night that really led to some powerful breakthroughs for them as leaders who are already, these guys are already well ahead of the curve in terms of how they've adapted to this new normal. Now, what I'd like for you to do, ideally, is to grab a pen and a piece of paper and write down some answers that you're about to give to this exercise, or your phone and tap them into notes, whatever you use for note taking. And at the very least, if you're running or you're in motion, to actually play this exercise right now in your mind. So what I would like you to do on question number 1, I'd like you to think about the 3 words that you would use to describe how you have shown up as a leader in your business over the last 4 weeks. 3 words to describe how you've shown up as a leader in your business over the last 4 weeks. 3 words to describe how you've shown up as a leader in your business over the last 4 weeks. Question number 2. 3 words to describe how you've shown up as a leader in your relationships. 3 words to describe how you've shown up as a leader in your relationships. You can get very specific about this one. Maybe it's how you've shown up as a leader in your romantic relationship, or in your family dynamic, or in your friendships, or with your parents. There's plenty of different ways that you can answer this, but what are 3 words you would describe to show that best describes how you've shown up as a leader in your relationships? And the third question, and this is probably the most important, 3 words to describe how you've shown up leading yourself over the last 4 weeks. 3 words to describe how you've shown up leading yourself over the last 4 weeks. Because a great leader knows that you can't really effectively lead others until you master the art of leading yourself. Because once you lead yourself effectively, there's a lot less heavy lifting that you have to do, because when you show up optimally, other people just naturally are inspired by the way that you are standing in the world today. Now, you've got 9 words right now that you should be either looking at or thinking about that have described how you've shown up as a leader in your business over the last 4 weeks, how you've shown up as a leader in your relationships, and how you've shown up leading yourself. And I'd encourage you to look at those 9 words to see, is there a lot of repetition? Are there some themes? Are they drastically different? In one of those categories, are you excelling? And in the others, maybe you're just average or you've not shown up much at all. Cool. Like this is just an opportunity for self-assessment and a real-time evaluation of where you are today so that we can take it to this last step, which is, what's the one word that's missing from the list? What's one word that you wish your leadership embodied, but it doesn't show up of those 9 that you've written down? Maybe bold doesn't show up. Maybe execution. Maybe fun. Maybe purpose. Maybe service mindset. Whatever it is, what's the one word that's missing from that list that you say, for this next week, I want to implement? And what is the action that you can take today on a daily basis from now until next week that would allow you to show up bold or in a service mindset or compassionate or whatever it is, right? This is your opportunity to show up in a bigger way, a more refined leader. And also think about which of those categories, whether it's business, your relationships, or leading yourself, that one word needs to show up most. And I wish you luck on that journey. So let us take a recap, a look back in where we have been over this past week with the conversations that we've had on the Great Man Within podcast. So Monday through Thursday, we did a deep dive on topics of sexuality. We started on Monday with an episode called Keeping Intimacy and Desire Burning During COVID, featuring our good friend, sex and intimacy coach, Alexa Martinez. And we talked about how for the foreseeable future, a good many of you people in relationships will be cooped up at home with your partner always around, likely wearing the same shit that they've been wearing for the past week. Maybe you are too, occupying a shared space that feels smaller by the day. How do you keep a sexual intensity or sexual heat in such an environment? And that's why Alexa Martinez, who's a sex and intimacy coach who founded the online Facebook group, the forum called The Kaleidoscope, which is a sex-positive forum to talk about all things sexuality. She came on our show to talk about how you can keep the desire burning even when you are home and around the same people all the time. She talked about the importance of having a weekly relationship board meeting, which is where you and your partner check in on how are you feeling? What kind of intimacy needs do you have this week? What desires are burning that you would want to stoke the flames on? She even talked about her and her masculine partner understanding where she is in her menstrual cycle, because it has a dramatic impact on how sexually adventurous she feels or how much nurturing she needs. And he also has a place to express what he may need from her. So that was a really, really popular episode from this past week on how to keep the desire burning during the COVID era. On Tuesday, I did a solo episode called Intentional Porn Habits During Quarantine. I would say this was one of the top 3 episodes of the last 3 weeks also. So I've already noticed that and spoken to a number of men that there's an uptick or an alarming increase in their porn habits as of late. Now, as we're diving deeper into the quarantine, which may last another month, maybe longer, it's essential that you are aware of drift when it comes to your porn habits. So during these times of isolation or feelings of suffocation, depending on like what your living situation is, it's natural to want to go and grab the quick fix like porn. But fellas, we are on this journey for the long haul, and I want you coming out of this thing stronger on the other side of it, not weakened and depleted. So we had an important conversation about maintaining intentionality around your porn habits during quarantine. And I talked about one of the reasons why you may be drawn to porn that makes you feel empty and shameful. And there's some research that I cited from a professor at Indiana University named Emily Nagoski, who is a very well-respected authority on the subject. She's got a few New York Times best-selling books on it. She says that our bodies often respond to what's sexually relevant, not what we actually desire or what's in alignment with our core values. That's where you may find yourself drawn to porn that makes you feel icky or shameful or gross, but when you continue to masturbate to it or fantasize to it, you're actually building a muscle and a desire for it that is out of alignment with like your core values. And over a course of time, that can really lead to some inner resentment and turmoil. So you have to understand that even when your body responds to something, to porn that is maybe reprehensible in your mind or guilty or shameful, it's not because like you actually like it. It's because of the fact that your body sees a sexual situation and it involuntarily responds. But where your intentionality comes in is, are you going to keep conditioning yourself to wanting more and more of that? Break that cycle. On Wednesday, released another soul episode called The Wisdom of the Brain Between Your Legs, Part 2. Did one of our earliest episodes, I think it was like the third or fourth episode, was The Wisdom of the Brain Between Your Legs, Part 1. And I referenced this quote from Robin Williams. It says, you see, God gave men both a brain and a penis, but only enough blood to run one at a time. And while I find this hilarious, and there's currently plenty of evidence to support that quote from my lifetime, my lifestyle for most of my life, I think that quote also serves to perpetuate like this antiquated and harmful social narrative that hurts both men and women. Because when it comes to sex, we've believed that men have no agency, and that we're dragged around by the whims of our dick, and that like we can't think bigger than the whims of our dick. And I want to tell you that that's bullshit. I share a really personal story on that episode, which actually was never meant to be shared on a public scale. It was a audio journal that I'd recorded for myself. Like it was going to be kept only for myself. But after I listened to it, I decided that I wanted to share it with you, our audience, about there was a time where my dick didn't want to go somewhere. And yet I said yes to a sexual situation because I didn't feel like I could say no. And what ended up happening was I ended up in a place where I felt sick to my stomach and violated, where I almost threw up. In the 24 hours I was sick afterwards, which caused me to listen to myself at a much deeper level, that some of my old behaviors were no longer serving me, that I did want to step up and say no when I didn't want something that previously maybe I'd said yes to. And I think that more and more men are coming online, waking up to the fact that there is a brain between our legs if we learn to listen, and if we stop perpetuating the social narrative that we're just dumb cavemen who want to stick our dicks in everything. Even though there's plenty of evidence at times to support that, the men who listen to this show are bigger than that. On Thursday, we released an episode called The Sources of Sexual Confidence with Ryan Thomas, who's a writer and a men's coach on sexuality. He's also part of the Kaleidoscope community. If you haven't joined the Kaleidoscope yet, go on Facebook and join the Kaleidoscope. It's a great forum for sex and sexuality. You can participate as much or as little as you like, and it's very welcoming. I've, over the last year and a half, had major breakthroughs just by going there and getting some of my questions answered. Ryan talked to us about how sexual confidence means, number one, being okay with your sexuality. Number two, being able to ask for what you want in bed without guilt or shame. And I find that a lot of men know what they want, but they don't know how to ask for it. And so they go to porn to get it because it's easier to do that than to negotiate for it, or to risk being shamed, or to have your partner say no, or to have your partner say it's weird. So this is like an important topic. Number three, sexual confidence means being in control of your sexual impulses. So not being dragged around by the whims of your dick. And number four, understanding your partner's pleasure and how he or she experiences sex. On Friday, I talked about how a great man plays the long game. I thanked each of you because this past week, we cracked the top 50. The Great Man Within podcast cracked the top 50 in the self-improvement category in all of Apple Podcasts. And I was just looking at some of like the top 10 or 20 podcasts that are out there, like Vishen Lakhiani's Mind Valley, Jim Quick's Quick Brain, Jordan Harbinger's show, Rich Roll's show. There's a lot of Marie Forleo's up there. There's a lot. Jocko Willink. Like there's a lot of really powerful podcasts in the top 20 for self-improvement. And we hit the top 50 this past week. And we said, I wanted to say thank you to you because you're the ones who are sharing it with others that allow us to be discovered. And it gave me a moment to reflect on the fact that In 5 years of doing content creation, I've never had a piece of content go viral. There's never been something that's just been like, boom, it caught fire and went around the world and then took us from where we were to like this new echelon. It has been a steady commitment and devotion to something that I know is purpose-driven, that is making a movement in this world. Mike P recognized that for us today, right? That testimonial I shared with you at the beginning of this episode. And so what I was inspired to talk about is how a great man is committed to playing the long game. Right? We're not interested in flashes in the pan. A great man commits. A great man keeps going when others would stop. A great man has a purpose and is unrelenting in his pursuit of it. And I want you to commit to the long game even when the struggle is real. And we're playing a long game right now, gentlemen. Right? This COVID thing, even when we get out of quarantine, there's going to be a long period of time of rebuilding and reconstituting. This is your training ground to play the long game, and I encourage you to listen to that episode. And finally, yesterday on Saturday, I released an episode called Inner Work Has Never Been More Important, and your boy Brian joined that episode as well. You know, over this past month, we have detected a distinct difference between two categories of men. Group A are men without a foundation of inner work, and Group B are the men with a foundation of inner work. And the three biggest differences that we've seen between those two groups is that men with an inner work foundation adapt faster to unfamiliar circumstances like this. Number two, men with an inner work foundation swiftly architect empowering new protocols to meet the changing landscape, while those without the inner work foundation are still kind of dragging their heels and holding on to old habits and behaviors. That's causing pain and frustration for them, their families, their business. And number three, men with an inner work foundation feel the significance of the time that we are in right now. And instead of demanding that this thing ends or hoping that it ends or praying that it ends as fast as humanly possible, instead, men with an inner work foundation are using this opportunity to fortify everything that they care about in their lives. So I want you to invest 20 minutes of your time in listening to that episode yesterday, because you are one who is building an inner work foundation, who is already on that path, and you are adapting quickly. So there we have it. That's the Sunday roundup. I want to remind you that that one word that you want to implement, that you want to show up in your leadership style today and tomorrow and for the remainder of this week is essential to you adapting first as a great leader and then leading others from that emotion of anxiety, overwhelm, frustration, directionlessness to a place that's something more profound, to something that's more productive, and something that feels like they're more in control. Because the faster that you can lead others to that place, the quicker that we heal as businesses, as families, as society. And it's going to take great men who are discovering and living that great man within them to make that shift happen.